So flowing from that, then, let's dive deep into the proceedings at the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry. Another week of explosive testimony at that commission, revealing the extent to which criminal syndicates allegedly wormed their way into the highest echelons of law enforcement and compromised politicians while perpetuating systemic corruption. From WhatsApp messages linking shady businessmen to top politicians to troubling infiltration of police tenders and appointments, the scale of which threatens to undermine public trust in institutions meant to protect us all. Yet the commission itself faced its own battles. Its chief evidence leader, Motau, abruptly resigned, and a recess later called due to the illness of crime intelligence boss General Dumisani Khumalo, a key witness who the nation hopes, in a manner of speaking, knows where all the bodies are buried. Before we get into the discussion, let's take a moment to listen to one or two of the excerpts, some of the revelations made by General Kumalo while he was testifying.
The main operational area of leadership for the cartel is in Gauteng, but the operational provinces, they are mainly KwaZulu-Natal, Western Cape, Eastern Cape, for various reasons. Gauteng, as I've indicated, it's an economic heart of the country where most of businesses as well as headquarters of targeted institutions are situated. KwaZulu-Natal, Western Cape, they are significant for their capability in terms of ports and transportation infrastructure, especially between Gauteng and KZN. The Eastern Cape, which is not so dominant in terms of economy, but then it's targeted because it makes it easier to expand the movement between Western Cape, Gauteng, and KwaZulu-Natal. The cartel operates not differently from normal employment in terms of the members receiving regular income for financial stability, which is a competition for the normal employment channels or environments that we have in the country.
All right, so that was just some of what was said during that testimony. I believe we actually have another excerpt that we want to play for you. So I don't know if we can roll that before we get into our conversation with independent legal analyst Bophelo Seleke, who is on standby to talk to us about that. All right, we'll come back to that clip a bit later on. Bophelo, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us once again. So I don't know about you, but I was deeply disturbed, deeply disturbed by some of what I heard there around the role of so-called syndicates and the linkages with political leadership and influence over various governance issues in the country. So disturbed that my only sense of comfort would only come from a defense that says none of those messages that were laid out by General Khumalo are actually what they purport to be. That would be the only time I have any comfort. In the absence of that, I think I've heard a lot that disturbed me. What was your sense?
Yeah, well, good day to us. My sense is that the Commission sits at the intersection of politics, policing, and organized crime. And these are three forces that define the stability of the South African state. But if we were to look at the testimony, I think a three-part testimony of Lieutenant General Dumisani Khumalo, we'd one frame it as perhaps testimony from a person who's seen as an intelligence insider, wherein we were presented with classified intelligence report, of course, some of which an application was made for them to be presented in camera, as well as intercepted communications. But this is a deep indication of deep criminal infiltration in police and political networks, We would have also heard the Lieutenant General name the Big Five cartel, which is alleged to dominate organized crime across KwaZulu-Natal and beyond. And I guess the overarching theme of his three-part affidavit, it's an outlining of criminal infiltration, of procurement corruption, and sabotage within intelligence divisions. But I think if we're committed to long memory, Tulas, we'll also remember that the Lieutenant General himself is no stranger to scrutiny. In fact, you'll remember that Kumalo himself has been the subject of internal SAPS investigations, reportedly involving procurement irregularities and allegations of misconduct dating back several years. So while he may not have been charged, his credibility and motives, for me, come under scrutiny in that they add a layer of complexity to the Commission's proceedings, wherein, the testimony itself can be seen as a bridge between whistleblower accounts with intelligence evidence, but his own investigations blurs the line between accuser and accused.
So say a bit more about that then. Are you emphasizing the need to be more circumspect in how we approach what we hear, not just from him, but I suppose from other witnesses as well, in that in times like these, are you saying that it becomes difficult to tell which side is the good side, quote unquote?
I guess what's important is also for us to remember that the South African psyche that we need to move away from is to view actors in the political or socio-economic and political space as angels and demons. And what I mean by that is simply by providing a testimony is not enough in a state that observes the rule of law to convict or pass any form of judgment on whether the veracity of the claim that's being made is true or not. What we have, fortunately, in terms of commissions is the Commissions Act, which grants commissions of inquiry the power to summon witnesses, to compel evidence, and to gather information under oath. However, the responsibility still remains of state actors, such as Parliament, such as law enforcement actionaries, for them to pick up the baton and actually follow through on what would have been revealed in commissions of inquiry. So in a sense, commissions of inquiry are constitutional instruments of executive accountability. However, their main focus is to diagnose but not to judge. We still have law enforcement, the MPA, the SAPS, and other functionaries that need to pick up the baton and actually scrutinize what would have then been testimonies of witnesses that appeared before commissions.
Sure. So that word of caution aside, Bophelo, what governance themes came through for you in some of the messages that were being exchanged? Part of my grave concern is that the messages, if they in the end stand unchallenged, they suggest that it's either people such as Vusumuzi Ket Matlala had a way of things aligning, the stars miraculously aligning in their favor, in that the political killings task team that was giving them some trouble ends up being disbanded, while at the same time there's a lot of chatter that is happening between himself and Brown Mokhotsi. So unless those messages are challenged, at the very least to me it says there are some serious questions to be answered by many players, not least of which the political players who led the institution of the police at the time.
So you also remember, if we give a bit of an overview of the testimonies that we've heard so far, we would have heard testimony from Lieutenant General Madlanga Commission, who can then be given the title of a whistleblower, who at the commission would have made several allegations, and in the absence of scrutiny on those allegations, the truth or the veracity of the allegations, they remain just that. Allegations that, if not acted on, will not yield any desired result as an outcome of this commission. We would have also heard testimony from General Fani Masemula, who I thought would have provided an institutional memory, an institutional account, seeing as he's the highest ranking authority figure in the SAPS echelons. But I was quite surprised to read, for me, in his testimony, that there perhaps was a denial of political interference, and rather framing controversial decisions as operational or resource related. It was also interesting to note that General Fani Masemola would have asserted that SAPS leadership acts within lawful command structures and that organization remains functional, disciplined, and accountable. You will remember, Tulas, that this will stand in stark contrast to the testimony of Advocate Patronella van Rooyen, I think is the head of legal services in SAPS, who clarified that ministers cannot lawfully issue operational orders. And this, for me, was a reinforcement of the principle of police independence. So it was quite interesting to see those two dynamics play out, where the general, the SAPS head, General Fani Masemola, would have not necessarily given heed or given, credence to assertions that there was a severe compromise even on his part. But his junior was a bit more forthright in coming through and saying, if a matter takes place in the shape and complexion that has been presented before the commission, then it's plain unlawful.
So let's turn to the other developments away from, what happened in the chamber out at the Bridget Mabandla Justice College, where the main activities taking place of the commission, to events around, in fact, well, partly in the chamber. The sudden illness of General Kumalo while he was testifying, but also the resignation of Advocate Motau as the chief evidence leader. Those two events, of course, naturally, South Africans, being South Africans, have fueled a lot of speculation and a lot of chatter and a lot of debate in the country. But what did you make of the two events? Unrelated in a way, but what did you make of, and how should we be interpreting and processing the fact that this witness fell sick, leading to the postponement until the 13th of October, while at the same time we're also seeing Advocate Motau resigning, not with much communication from the commission itself?
Well, I think the commission, for me, has faced logistical strain, limited resources, and heightened political sensitivity. For instance, Kumalo's illness, and perhaps now, through our discussion, his own investigations, should raise credibility and continuity issues, while reflecting also on the fragile state of institutional integrity. I'm of the opinion, though, that public expectations remain high, with civil society calling for real consequences rather than symbolic exposure. And I think the illness of a key witness captures the paradox of the commission in that it's seeking truth from a system that's already compromised. It's also important to us to contextualize the functioning of the commission. I mean, you and I know that commissions are established in terms of the Constitution, Section 842, F of the Constitution, which empowers the president. But also, it's not a bottomless resource outfit. Commissions themselves have to operate within established operational budgets. And if I'm not mistaken, the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development would have bandied an amount of 147 million, which I think is at the center of the resignation of the senior counsel and evidence leader. So there's quite a number of considerations in as far as commissions of inquiries are concerned. But I think what the public needs to take out of it is let's keep the eye on the ball so that at the end we are able to do something with the recommendations.
All right, let's leave it there. I've got to thank you for your time and your insights. That's Bophelo Seleke, who is an independent legal expert weighing in on what we've seen at the Madlanga Commission this past week.